Thanks a lot. Yeah, so just kind of get you acquainted with me. Um, um, when I say mobile marketing and games together, it basically means that I've always tried to find a way to get someone else to pay for the games, and that's really what I'm here to talk about today as well. Among other things, I've been the producer of over 100 AVA games for big brands like Kellogg's, Nestle, Mars, Lego, etc. I've also had a stint at running product planning for Flash for mobile at Macromedia. Just kind of to give you kind of a highlight of what I'm going to talk about is it's really about how we get retailers to pay for in-game items. What's interesting about that is that right now in-game items is only bought by a small amount of users, and by getting retailers to pay for in-game items for more of these users, there's a chance of basically retaining these users a lot better. One of the problems with the freemium model is that if you are not one of the users who are buying these in-game items, it's not really fun to stay around. Another thing that's really important here is increasing monetization, of course. Monetizing only a small portion of the users isn't really what we want to do. We want to monetize all the users. And finally, one of the key things about retail is that right now they're not getting what they need out of mobile. If you ask most retail CMOs or VP marketings, how many clicks or how many impressions does it take to get someone to walk into your store? The answer is they don't know. And even when some of the kind of more eager ones have told me, let me just check with my team, they'll come back and say, no, we don't know. And the answer is there is absolutely no way of tracking that today. You can't know whether those banners actually influenced your business. It's a little bit the same as with other forms of marketing. You actually don't have a way of tracking whether a TV ad drives traffic to your store. But TV is still such a big item that you can actually track it just by seeing the bump in your stats. Doing that with banners, even in a popular game like Angry Birds, it's not possible. So what we need is something that tracks exactly how many people walk into the stores because of the ads. But before we talk about that, let's take a step back and look at what's happening with the mobile game industry. How many here are involved in developing mobile games or selling mobile games? Okay, so 40% or something, I think. The big move that's been happening for a while and is still happening is basically the move from premium to freemium in mobile gaming, and to some extent in all gaming. I don't know if you noticed, but even EA has now clearly come out and said that they believe the future model is freemium. Now, the problem I have with that is that freemium is not a business model. It's a business strategy, and you have to basically slide business models in under that. Now, obviously, one of those models is selling in-game items, but that's not enough. You got to have more than that. The key to using freemium is because you want to get wide adoption. So the difference between successfully selling a game and successfully giving it away can be 10 times in terms of user adoption, and obviously that makes a big difference. Now, the challenge is to monetize all those 10 times more users that you're getting. One of the problems with freemium is that there's this pressure going on. You can't just make a game and then hope people buy your in-game items. You got to build into the game mechanics of the game that it's very attractive to buy these in-game items, that there is a promise of more fun in the game to buy these in-game items. Or else, why would anybody buy them? Now, the minute you do that, you're actually putting pressure not just on the few players who will actually buy these in-game items, but on all the players. It'd be equivalent of, let's have a party and then have a VIP area. Now, you've probably been to a party with a VIP area. You may have even been to a party where there was a VIP area, but if you weren't in the VIP, you might not have known about it because it was, that door in the corner or behind that curtain in the corner. And that's the way to do VIP areas. But imagine if instead we put up a big curtain going across the room, big letters saying all the fun's behind this curtain. That's pretty much the equivalent of saying buy these in-game items if you want all the fun. What happens is that whoever decides to buy and come in behind the curtain and have all the fun are having fun. They're going to stay around, whereas the rest of the people in the room are going to, at some point, look at that curtain and go, okay, I'm not going to pay to go in there, so why am I sticking around? And then they'll leave. And that's really what happens with freemium games. Users leave if they don't decide to buy the in-game items. And if we look at the percentages, kind of standard for the industry is that you get around 2 to 3% of the users to buy these in-game items. I know I've certainly heard successful games to have less than 1% buying the in-game items. And there are exceptions. Rovio's Mighty Eagle at some point was rumored to have 20% adoption, but that is really a very special case. So what do we do about this? Well, I mean, clearly we have to ask the question, if the result is pressure and we don't really have a choice of moving the pressure, does freemium still deliver retention and optimal monetization? There's certainly proof that it doesn't, in terms of monetization, deliver all it could. Over the last 2 years, the overall revenue in the industry has grown by a factor of 3, but the number of game sessions have grown by a factor of 10. So, in essence, there is somewhere between the ability to double or even potentially triple the revenue. Now, the number of game sessions is going to continue to grow, so the potential for the industry is even higher, but certainly we can't have this disparity, and it's even worse than just looking at it in factor 3 and factor 10. The curve of game sessions goes like this, and the curve of monetization goes like this, so the gap is getting bigger and bigger for every month, every year. Now, that doesn't mean we're not in an industry that's great. I mean, most industries don't have a 3-time growth in revenues over 2 years, but we're leaving money on the table. The other problem with freemium is losing users. So the stats here from Flurry basically show that most mobile users leave a game within the first month. If you look at this in days instead, it gets even worse. You could just say, well, that's the problem with having free stuff. There is no commitment to getting it, so people have no reason to stay. Well, I think it's more than that. In the market right now, we're seeing games that are really focused on driving revenue, and we're seeing games that somebody built for fun, and they don't really care about revenue out the door. They'll worry about that later. And one of the things that we're seeing here is that users are, to some extent, leaving freemium games for free-to-play games that are completely free. Some of them don't even have ads. I've talked to game developers who's been around for 2 or 3 years with popular games, and they're right now saying, we're looking to hire a monetization guy. So it's definitely a problem that's growing. So what do we do about stopping that? How can we make freemium better? How can we make freemium work? Well, we got to stop leaving money on the table, and we got to stop losing users. There's various ways of defining who are the whales and who are the dolphins, etc. in freemium. The way I look at it, the whales are the ones that buy in-game items. You could You could basically start talking about whales and dolphins within those buyers as well. But certainly for purposes of trying to monetize all the users, I think this is the right way of looking at it. So we got the whales monetized. They're buying in-game items. And of course, we keep on trying to get them to get that percentage to be higher than 2 to 3%. But I don't know anybody in the industry who's expecting that to be more than potentially 5%, and even for some crazy successful freemium games, 10%. That still means the vast majority of all the users are not being monetized by selling them in-game items. So if we look at kind of the next step down from that, let's call that dolphins, then we need to basically find a way to get the in-game items to these users, but we can't expect them to pay because that's what we're already doing up here in the first level of monetization. So we have to find someone else to pay. Now, there are definitely models out there that are trying to get that money from existing sources. In other words, driving traffic to e-commerce, driving traffic to sign up for something. The problem with that is that mobile isn't really being used for signing up for stuff to near the same degree as people are using their desktop computers or their tablets at home. So we got to find something the mobile is really good at. Well, mobile is always with the user. Wherever they go, their mobile phone is with them. So that's really the key here is how can we use the fact that it's something that is with the user all the time and also which knows the user's location. What we come up with is basically called sponsored locations. And the idea is basically that you get the retailers to pay for the in-game items whenever the user goes to the retailer's location. In other words, we're driving traffic to retailers. That's one of their top marketing objectives is to get traffic into the store. If they have a high conversion, like fast food or beverages or supermarkets, convenience stores, they basically consider a person in the store a sale. 90-some% of people that walk into those stores buy something. So we're directly driving their business by sending people into their store. They're willing to pay for that. And in terms of what we get in terms of retention, well, now the user is still being told, go buy this item, but they have a choice now. They can go get it for free instead from a retailer. And when they do that, they get the item, they get to be part of the fun, they get to be part of the VIP area we talked about before. So suddenly the pressure is off these users. And we suddenly have 3 times as many users that are now part of the inner fun of our games and a potential of increasing our retention by a factor of 3. And of course, nothing is stopping us from still monetizing the small fish with advertising like we're already doing. And now those users also feel less pressure because, yes, we're telling them, go buy these items, but they know that even if they choose not to go to a retailer and get a free item, they have that option. So the pressure feels, very, very different. It's kind of like being at a party again and knowing that you can go into that VIP area. You don't have to pay. You can get sponsored if you want to. It's up to you. So let's talk about the user experience. How does this work in the games? One of the things that's really important with freemium is that you have to make sure that your monetization models work with the game, not against the game. So imagine you're playing a freemium game. In this case, it's Trapeze Heroes. And the game is basically checking where you are. And whenever you're nearby a sponsoring location, and you're in a situation where you might need an in-game item, then it's going to basically say that one is available for free nearby. In this case, I can get a carnival grip. That means I can do better trapeze tricks if I go to this sponsoring location nearby. So when I click View Map, I basically see where I am and where the sponsoring retailer is. And there could be several on the map. In this case, it's walking distance. If it was going to Tesco, it might be a more zoomed out map, and it'd be me driving there instead. For the retailers, this is all about driving traffic, increasing frequency, increasing location awareness. In other words, if I can get to a point where I visit 3 different coffee shop locations of a chain instead of 2, then the chances that my frequency is going to increase goes up. So location awareness is something that sponsor location can drive. And it can also just basically drive you to go to one sandwich chain rather than another for lunch, because the sandwiches are more or less the same, but one of them give you this free in-game item that you really want in your favorite game. So the minute you walk into the store, it basically comes up and says, congratulations, you got your free in-game item, sponsored in this case by Toffee Coffee. So it's completely automatic. The game knows where you are and therefore can reward you. And the minute that the user gets the reward, you as a game developer have gotten a monetizable event. You basically had a sponsor pay for the in-game item instead of user. Immediately after that, the sponsors also get a chance to drive people not just inside the door, but all the way up to the cash register with some form of special offer in the game. When we put this in front of users and ask them, what do you think about these ads? They go, what ads? Well, the thing with McDonald's. No, that's not advertising. They're just helping me get these things I want in the game. So what we achieved here is completely getting away from the problem of what are all these stupid ads that I don't want doing in my game to, that's just something in the game where I can get free items if I don't want to buy them. It's completely integrated into the game. So pretty cool, right? But let's talk more about money. So far, most of the monetization models to supplement selling in-game items are fishing in the small pool. So what's happened is that we have successful display banners online. They're commanding somewhere around $3.50 eCPM, which is pretty good. And the reason that that's working is it's driving traffic to websites that are selling the user something or having them sign up for something. So there's complete trackable information all the way from the click to some form of monetizable event for the person paying for the ad. What's happened is that the industry has taken that and completely copied it to mobile. Unfortunately, it doesn't work nearly as well on mobile. The average eCPM on mobile is about $1.50. And in games, it's only a few cents more than $0.50 eCPM. And that's because the idea of being in a game and clicking on a banner and buying something or going to sign up for something is just a lot more far-fetched than doing so when you're browsing for something in the web browser. And the banners on the phones are also a lot less personalized because cookies don't work on mobile. So if we look at how can we change that, it's time to bring in the icebreaker here and get access to the real big budgets. Retail is the biggest advertising spender in the world. In the U.S., it's just short of $22 billion a year. In the world, it's 3 times that. That's their ad budgets. When we talk to the retailers, they want to spend more on mobile, but they can't do it without a clear ROI. Nobody is going to increase that spend. Right now, it's less than 1% they're spending on mobile. they're willing to increase that significantly. They know that the users are spending 10% of their media time on mobile, so potentially it can increase to 10% of those budgets. But they need clear ROI. And they're not getting that from CPM or CPC models. And there's no changing that. In the meantime, they're spending a lot of money on getting Facebook likes, which is a bit of a conundrum, because if you ask them how many Facebook likes it takes to get somebody to walk into the store and buy something, the answer is they don't know. So why is it that retailers really like sponsored locations? Well, they get positive branding by being part of the game. So it's really like one of their favorite things around entertainment is actually advertainment, where you build games around their brand. The problem is really hard to get distribution and get good quality games that way. But here, they get to be part of the top games in the industry. It directly drives traffic to their stores. And when these users get into the store, they've just gotten a free in-game item in their favorite game sponsored by the brand. So they have a high purchase intent. They really feel good about this brand right at this moment. So the likelihood they're going to convert to a purchase is really high. And they get clear stats on what games drove the users there, when it happened, etc. They can even decide when they want the users to come to the stores. We can drive traffic in different day parts. What they pay for this is somewhere between, starting at $125 per user, and then going upwards. It goes a little higher than this if we get into electronics and car dealerships, etc. But the idea is basically that they pay more if it's a store that's a little harder to drive people to, because the frequency of people going to those stores are higher. So in other words, the reason it's cheaper for a coffee shop or a fast food place is basically because you can drive people to those places with a lot higher frequency, daily or even multiple times a day. And we split this with the developers. We supply the sponsors, just to be clear on that, and developers get to keep 70%. So what does users love about this? Well, the pressure is off. They don't feel forced to buy in-game items. They can still stay, play the game, and have fun, because now they can choose between paying or getting it for free. They don't have to leave. It suddenly enhances the game experience rather than compromise it. They get free in-game items, and they even get additional rewards in the store. So what does developers like about this? Well, it addresses two of the three top objectives for a developer. The three top objectives for a developer is getting users, keeping users, and monetizing users. We address two of those. It significantly increases retention. It monetizes non-paying users. And it unlocks a whole new set of budgets for monetizing games. Nice thing about these budgets is it's really scalable. There's no limitations on this. It's not like the retailers are going to say, "Oh, you drove 100,000 people to my stores this month. Next month I don't need more people." That retail doesn't work that way. The need is constant. They will continue to want traffic every single month. So this suddenly becomes not that was fun campaign, but something that goes on the marketing budget every month. And when we talk to the big retailers like Starbucks, McDonald's, etc., that is how they look upon sponsored locations and being in games. So, and just to be clear, in terms of sponsored locations, we launched the technology in April. It's being built into a bunch of games right now. We're launching with a very, very large game publisher that I can't tell you the name of, at least not standing up here, in next month. And the total number of DAU being exposed to this by the end of the year is going to be somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 million DAU. So to kind of sum it up, sponsored locations is unlocking the big retail ad budgets. It's something that really makes mobile work. There is no other model out there that provides clear ROI on mobile for retailers. It increases your game's retention. This is not a matter of saying, oh, you need to implement this instead of something else. This is something that supplements the other monetization models. We definitely recommend that game developers use 3 to 5 different models to monetize under the kind of freemium umbrella. You're suddenly getting 10 times as many users, so you really need to look at what monetization model works for each type of user. And basically, sponsored locations makes freemium work. It fixes some of the severe problems that freemium is having right now. And you don't have to just trust me on that. You can basically look at pretty much any newspaper these days and look and see how EA is having problems with freemium, Zynga is having problems with freemium, and those are just the ones that the newspapers write about. I think pretty much everybody is having a challenge with just monetizing on selling in-game items or banners that work better online.